All right, well, that might have been a little loud, but what's good, everybody? It's your boy, Champagne Chico. And what else would we come back with other than a mock draft? And today it's a way too early mock draft, as you have seen in the past week since the actual NFL draft of 2024, that still seems to be speculated in some ways as to why certain people made certain decisions. We're still trying to figure out why the Falcons decided to take Michael Penix whenever they just signed Kirk Cousins, but that's their own decision and that's their own future that they're fucking up, because we thought they're on the right trajectory and then they just fucked it up. But anyways, talking about another franchise that has fucked up their trajectory in the past years, unloading a haul for the number one pick last year. But I think Bryce Young can definitely live up to that value in a way at some point, but he just didn't have the cast around him last year. But they did get rid of Brian Burns, which is going to be a big concern going into this draft and going into the season, since their defensive line seems to only have Derek Brown. And now we have to see what they're going to do about that. And the draft itself could be very interesting in its own right, especially with the upcoming college season that we're going to be having, with the college football 25 coming out on July 19th, which you should be expecting content from me with that game for sure. But James Pierce Jr., who excelled in his performance last year and seems to be on the right path to be the number one pick with a team that needs an edge rusher now, especially on a rookie contract and not have to pay him. If he can fill in that Brian Burns role that Brian Burns has been doing the last basically 3 or 4 years at this point, I think the Panthers will be just fine on defense once again. This draft is going to be probably a lot of those positions that you wouldn't really expect. It's not going to be flashy, I wouldn't think. It's not going to be a lot of QBs, a lot of wide receivers like it was in this draft. We didn't see an offensive tackle go off the board, or an offensive tackle after Joe Alt go off the board until what? I can't even remember, but it was a bit later in the draft that I started seeing the tackles fall. But I never expected them to be staying up there as long as they did. Just like the cornerbacks, with Quinion Mitchell getting drafted by the Eagles at that. But James Pierce Jr. is really the man that I see the Panthers taking. He had 10 sacks last year and 2 forced fumbles. I think he can improve those numbers even more this year with Tennessee going into another possible good season. And we're just going to have him go to the Carolina Panthers, hopefully helping out that young team and Bryce Young on the defensive side, while Bryce Young handles the offensive side. But now we have the New England Patriots, who just drafted their QB, possibly of the future. I do have faith in Drake May to be that. But now they have to figure out everything else. Now they are still the New England Patriots. So I would not expect them to take a wide receiver, even if a wide receiver shows his value out at this point of the draft. And I think they're going to try to focus on the tackle. I think they are, because if I'm not mistaken, one of their tackles did just leave to the Bengals, Trent Brown, if I'm not mistaken. And Will Campbell is a behemoth of a man. 6'6", 325, sophomore too, so he's young. Will Campbell should shape up to be a good pass protector with his size and with his foot quickness that he has. I think that he should have a very high ceiling in that matter, and the Patriots should be able to take him at this spot comfortably, because I don't think they try to take a chance on a cornerback in this just yet. Although I do think there's going to be a cornerback going early in this draft. But Will Campbell is the option that I see the Patriots going with. Now, I got Cook last year for Olu Fashanu going to the going to the Patriots at like the third spot. Not at the way too early mock draft, but the one after that I made. And that was funny to see, because I literally expected that they were going to need a tackle regardless with the expiring contracts. But Will Campbell, out of LSU, behemoth, and really has all the potential just because of his size and also his foot quickness that he has, and his extension off the initial snap is very impressive. But he should improve a little more this year, and hopefully he will, because I like to see the tackles go off the board early instead of later on like they have been in the past couple years, except for Joel. But the Denver Broncos are now on the board, and they might be looking at the defensive side. QB is an option here, but they just got Bo Nix. So that's the issue with that, because I don't see Bo Nix really performing at the NFL level as good as they probably expect him to do so. I would try to put something around him, but this just doesn't seem to be the draft. Now, you can also go with a two-way threat and utilize Travis Hunter. And Sean Payton has been known to use Taysom Hill in that type of role at points. Not on both sides of the ball, but just multiple positions on offense. But Travis Hunter is very talented, and I think has the stamina to go on both sides of the ball if you really need him to. Or choose one or the other every other game or something like that. Just keep the other team on their toes. But Travis Hunter, I've always thought, is very talented. Even whenever he went to Jackson State instead of FSU or any flashy school, he chose to go to Deion Sanders to learn and to get that mentality that Deion Sanders has in his head. And I think that he's really fully grasped it at this point. And I'm excited to watch Colorado this year at that. But Travis Hunter is one of my favorite players in this draft class. The cornerback wide receiver duel split, and he had 3 interceptions last year, which isn't bad. He did get injured, and it kind of like shook it up a little bit. I think if he would have kept pace with what he had already, I think he would have been a perennial top 3 pick in this draft for sure. But I'm excited for him to be in this draft class coming up and to see what he's going to do this year at Colorado. But Denver Broncos, I'm going to have him taking him, not only for the cornerback to put him next to PS2, but I would definitely put him on the offensive side of the ball to try to help Bo Nix as much as possible. But the Tennessee Titans are now on the board, and this year's really the telltale of if Will Levis is going to be your QB of the future. I have some confidence that he will be because we saw flashes of it last year. And I also have some confidence that they're going to try to look in another direction for QB. And with one of the better QBs in this draft class being Carson Beck, who we definitely saw perform well at Georgia last year, I wouldn't be against it. He had about 4,000 yards, 24 TDs, and 6 interceptions, and a 168 rating. It really just depends on how Will Levis does. I wouldn't be surprised if they go a different route, though. Because they have all these weapons that they added. They signed Calvin Ridley. They still have DeAndre Hopkins. Their defense is still... It's on the younger side now. It's not as old as it used to be. I think it's still talented. This only happens if Will Levis doesn't perform. I might go with it, though, because I don't know how Will Levis is going to do. I don't. I think he's very... he's almost like J.J. McCarthy, that he has his spurts of being like this unstoppable quarterback, also because of his size and his grit that he has. But that's going to probably bite him in the ass at some point because he might get hit at some point and not be able to take it. But he also shook off a tackle from Jalen Ramsey in the Dolphins Monday Night Football game. But I'm going to go Carson Beck. I think Carson Beck is very talented. I think he is a top 5 quarterback in this draft. He could be a top 5 quarterback at that, but I could also see this be a defensive pick like Will Johnson or Mason Graham. I can't see offensive line. They've been doing that the past couple years already. If Will Levis does not perform to the level that they want him to, I think they go with Carson Beck and Will Levis just goes on the bench and they have a QB battle at that point. But I think Carson Beck would come out on top if it was one-on-one. And now, the New York Giants, who everybody speculated was going to pick a QB in this draft in 2024, did not do it, which kind of blows my mind that they didn't pull the trigger on any sort of trade. I mean, I know that the Patriots and the Commanders weren't really budging much on a trade. They were basically expecting what the Bears got last year for the number one pick, but that's not probably happening ever again. That's just not a smart thing to do. But the Carolina Panthers can be a little stupid sometimes. No offense to the Carolina Panthers. That was just not the best choice possible, unloading all those picks, and on top of that, giving DJ Moore. I didn't really understand that much. But the New York Giants needs their QB. And that couldn't be more the truth. And since the moment that they drafted Malik Nabers, they were already seeing the signs of Shedeur Sanders going to the New York Giants. And I can still see it. Although it's been a couple weeks and all the dust has kind of settled in terms of just everybody going back and forth about the mock drafts and what's going to happen next year and basically all that stuff. And now we're just waiting for the college season. I still think Shedeur Sanders is going to be a New York Giant next year. And they probably want that. They probably rather have Carson Beck. But Shedeur Sanders is not a bad QB. And I think that he's going to develop a lot more this year with a semi-better O-line than he'd had last year. With still weapons around him. I just hope that his offensive line does perform this year so he can really show off his talent. He showed it off last year. It's just he didn't have basically more than 3 seconds in the pocket. And it's almost like Tua Tagovailoa at that point. But Shedeur Sanders is the man that I'm going to have going to the New York Giants. Only had 3,200 yards, 27 TDs, and 3 interceptions. He had a lower rating than Carson Beck, so that's really where Carson Beck beat him out on top of the passing yards because Georgia liked to pass the ball with Carson Beck, and Colorado liked to run it a good bit, whether it was an option or with the running back. But Shedeur Sanders I am going to have going to the Giants. I think Brian Daboll can use him effectively and develop him effectively. I think as he did with Josh Allen, he could definitely be that QB whisperer once again with Shedeur coming into New York. And now the Washington Commanders, who also took a QB over offensive line in comparison with the New England Patriots, I think could also do the same for this upcoming draft, which is look at the tackle position. Their offensive line is good, but it's not great. And you need it to be great if you're going to have Jaden Daniels running around and doing whatever to extend the play, to get somebody open, or to pass it the way that in the spot that he wants to. And another man that could be a tackle, but also is probably going to be a guard is Calvin Banks. He's 6'4", 324. He's improving. He has the weight, but the size is concerning me. I know that now it's basically normal for the tackles to be 6'7", at minimum, 6'6", if you need it to be, like Will Campbell, who is 6'6". Calvin Banks, though, has been strictly a left tackle whenever he plays. In the mock drafts, they might try to push him into guard. But he could just be an undersized tackle and hold his ground and figure it out. He's talented, but I just don't know if he's going to stay at tackle. But I think the Commanders need offensive line regardless. I don't think they go anywhere else here. I mean, they did lose Kendall Fuller this last offseason. Mason Graham is also an option. He's talented. He just needs more playing time. I mean, his stats just don't fly off the page, but you can definitely see the talent that he has when he's on the field. I'm going to go Kelvin Banks, though. I really can't see these two tackles dropping out of the top 10, and I feel like that's what would happen if he drops any more. We'll go Kelvin Banks here. We'll go with Kelvin Banks. And now the Arizona Cardinals at the number 7 pick are on the board and could be looking for defense, but more the secondary, because they have some good cornerbacks. They have some good safeties. I mean, they have Budda Baker still, and Thompson has started to perform well at free safety. So now I think they try to get a CB1 or a very talented cornerback at that. And Will Johnson seems to be some people CB1 in this draft class, even over Travis Hunter at points. Now, me personally, no. I know that he's very talented, but this concerns me. That's what concerns me. But I think that he could still perform well. The targets did drop, so they respected him over that season period, so that probably led to him not being able to perform as much. But he did get 4 picks over the 3 that he got in 2022. I think if he keeps that same trajectory, it will be good for him. He has some good size at 202 and 6'2", and that might be what the Cardinals look for, because I feel like they go undersized a good bit. And yeah, out of U of M, Will Johnson coming off the board to the Arizona Cardinals, who could possibly be higher in the draft order, but this is strictly based off of their strength of schedule and what they see these teams doing in this upcoming season. And with the Vikings now on the board, this is another team that could go defense and specifically cornerback once again. Benjamin Morrison, who has gotten better over the last year and I think can continue to go better. Had less picks. I could see him getting better. 185 is a little concerning, but 6 foot is nice to see, because that makes me think of Nate Wiggins in this draft class, that he was supposed to come in a certain way and then he came in lighter. So I don't know how I feel about 185, but I think regardless, they're going to want to take cornerback. And after him, the only one would probably be Denzel Burke that I would even think about. But I feel like this would be a little too early for Denzel Burke to be taken. 6'1", 190 junior. He's just more of a deflection type of cornerback. Like, he's not going to be a ball hawk. And I think that the Vikings might want more of a ball hawk to be able to get the turnovers. And Benjamin Morrison might be able to do that with his 3 picks and 6 picks the previous season. Yeah, he's going to go to Minnesota out of Notre Dame. And now the Raiders are on the clock. And this is a spot where they didn't look for this position specifically in this draft class. Probably because it was going to be too much to move up. And you either pick Jalen Milroe or Jalen Milroe or Quinn Ewers. And Quinn Ewers, I think, has the edge over Jalen. Now, I don't really see when Jalen will be taken after this position here. The Jets, I don't know. The Steelers, I also don't know. They do have 2 QBs on an expiring contract, but they basically are probably going to have to pick who they want to keep. But 2 very talented QBs. The Saints, I just can't see the Saints doing it with Derek Carr on contract. But Quinn Ewers performed very well this last season. I mean, we saw some weaknesses in the championship games that he played. I think he has a hell of an arm, and I think he can continue that this season. 3,500 yards, 68.5 percentage. He's been improving over the season, so that's what you need to see at this point. 88 passing rating in 2022, and then a 108. After that, the picks need to go down. They've stayed consistent. At least his TD numbers have gone up. Yards per attempt is 8.8. So, yeah, Quinn Ewers can be your throw it up to Devontae Adams type of guy. And Brock Bowers, now that they have him. I just don't see Aiden McConnell being the starting QB another year. And they also have Gardner Minshew. And Gardner Minshew might be taking over that QB room at some point. But Quinn Ewers is probably the QB of the future for the Las Vegas Raiders. I keep almost saying Oakland Raiders. I feel like that logo is an Oakland Raiders logo. Oh, no. It's just Raiders. The Seattle Seahawks, though. I almost forgot that the Seattle Seahawks took Byron Young in this, or Byron Murphy in this past draft. So I wouldn't go defensive interior. I would try to go edge because a lot of people had Jared Verse going to the Seahawks, me, myself included. I could see Harold Perkins, more of a outside linebacker than anything. But I think he can do both for the Seahawks, and I think that's what they need at this point. They have a lot of rush ends or just rush ends, edge rushers, or just straight up nose tackles that can get to the ball. Especially after re-signing Leonard Williams. I think Harold Perkins would be the guy that they try to go with here, if he does end up performing well this season as well. LSU has some talent, but we're going to go with Harold Perkins going to the Seattle Seahawks, and outside linebacker really, who can come off the edge and go into coverage. But the New Orleans Saints are now on the clock and seem to have not been acknowledging a certain position too much in the past couple years. Wide receiver. Now, I would love for Emeka Egbuka to rise up the ranks a little bit, but right now Luther Burden is at the top with his insane growth that he had in the last 2 years, basically going up 800 yards and getting 14.1 yards per reception and 9 TDs. He is 5'11", 208. I think that he'll be very good. Now, these wide receivers are probably not going to be like the Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. that we saw in this draft class, but I think they can definitely be that kind of wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 type of position. He might not be that wide receiver 1 that you need, but he can be that for the time being for the Saints, because who else are they going to go with other than Chris Olave? They have some talent, but you need to rely on a little bit more. And I think Luther Burden III out of Missouri is going to be the guy that they try to go with to put some talent across from Chris Olave. Yeah, those stats are just incredible. Now, with the Bucs at the 12th spot, we're going to be looking at cornerback. It seems to be a position that they keep losing and that they need to get younger at. And I think one that would fit in is Denzel Burke. He is more of a coverage cornerback. You're not gonna rely on him to make a tackle. But whenever he's in man or he's just in coverage, he is a hell of a cornerback, and you can definitely rely on him in that case. His run defense is good. His zone is also good, but I would rely on him more in press, and that's really what you have to do sometimes, and do the straight up one-on-one between the wide receiver and the cornerback to be able to make sure that everybody else has their assignments as well. But I think Denzel Burke out of Ohio State would be taken by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here. I just don't see these guys being the ones. 6'4", he's not going to be able to move as much as the Bucks are probably going to want him to. And I just like Denzel Burke a little more than Jabbar Muhammad. And we're going to go with him going there. And the Colts are now on the board, who picked up Latu at the 15th overall pick, who a lot of people loved the fit. A lot of people loved that they were confident to get him at that 15th spot because some people had him dropping. I think he was even the first edge rusher off the board because Dallas Turner didn't go to the Falcons. He ended up going to the Minnesota Vikings, who ended up trading up to the 17th spot to be able to get Dallas Turner. But Latu being the first man off the board shows you how talented he is and what he can do. Now, I see him as a Jalen Phillips, and I think the Colts made a good choice picking him at the 15th spot with confidence. But now I think they focus on another side of the defense, and that's going to probably be a linebacker out of Penn State. Abdul Carter, who could very well fill in that box spot that Shaq Leonard was handling for a while. It seems a bit open right now. I think if he continues to progress at Penn State, he could definitely be the pick for the Indianapolis Colts. 6'3", 250. Yeah, 48 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 5 pass deflections, 1 interception, and 1 fumble forced this past season. And I think those stats can go up in this upcoming season, and I hope to see it do so. But I think this is the spot that the Colts are going to try to focus on and improve on because they seem to be more defensive-minded than anything in the draft. But the Pittsburgh Steelers are now on the clock at the 14th spot, who I don't think are going to go QB. I think they're going to also go defense, which is concerning because we've seen a lot of defensive players go off the board, but there's just not much of any offensive players that are really going to be standing out for some of these teams to really pick them in the first rounds. Safety is a concern with Minkah Fitzpatrick getting older, getting more injury prone, really. And you need to be looking at the future. Malachi Starks improved a lot and could be very versatile for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think that he could fit into that Pittsburgh Steelers defense and excel. It seems like a lot of safeties tend to do so that have this type of talent. Out of Georgia, too, the Dogs. Yeah, Malachi Starks. It's a bit high for a safety to be going up here, but 52 tackles, 7 pass deflections, and 3 interceptions is impressive for such a stacked Georgia defense and to just be involved in it. I think he can perform well for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Malachi Starks going to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the Los Angeles Rams at the 15th spot are now on the board. And they ended up taking, if I'm not mistaken, a lineman. No, they took Jared Verse. I'm tripping balls today. Sorry. But Jared Verse ended up going to the Rams. And a lot of people even had a scenario that they were going to take offensive tackle or not even, just offensive line in general, possibly trade down. I think they need to focus on offensive line in this one. And another behemoth of a man at LSU is Emory Jones, 6'6", 315. Has only allowed 2 sacks and 1 hit in 15 hurries, but has played right tackle for the majority of his college career, and that would fit in just fine with the LA Rams. I mean, he's even played a little bit of guard. I think he could be able to go to either side of the ball. But if you keep him at right tackle, I think he would excel even more, and his ceiling should be high, just like Will Campbell at the second spot, just because of their size and extension. Yeah. Emory Jones going to the LA Rams. I couldn't really see him going any further down or to any other team at that. The 16th spot, the Jaguars, who seem to be struggling with these defensive line picks. But this is more of the interior, which they tend to need a little more. Deion Walker is a possibility with 6'6", 348. Oh my gosh. Could also see Mason Graham. Very talented. A bit more undersized. The Jaguars might want to get more of a larger defensive tackle or nose tackle at that. I'll go Mason Graham for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm surprised he even fell that far. I think he could definitely go top 10 to a good team or a team that trades up. But the Cleveland Browns are on the clock and seem to keep trying to look for this position through other teams, like getting Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, and they might try to prepare for the future with those contracts possibly being up soon. I like Emeka Egbuka. McMillan is also very talented, had 10 TDs and 1,400 yards at Arizona, and is 6'5", 205, which completely outdoes Emeka Egbuka, 6'1", 206. I think he had a peak at one point with Ohio State. His injury didn't really help him as much, but McMillan might be the guy because they don't really have that physical type of wide receiver, in my opinion. And McMillan could be that. 130 targets, that's wild. I was just admiring the fact that he's 6'5", 205. Might need a little more weight. But McMillan is the man that I have going to the Cleveland Browns. 15.6 average yards per reception is wild. And the Chicago Bears are now on the clock, probably making it to the playoffs. A lot of people assume they will. This could be a spot that they take defense, since a lot of people kind of thought that they were going to take defense at that 9th spot, but they ended up taking Rome Odunze, which a lot of people weren't upset about. I also was not either. But here's a spot that I could see them taking edge. It's just, who are they going to take in this position? The Bears might try to look for more of a run defense type of edge. I mean, he can also be a pass rusher, really. I think he's very talented. I don't know why he's ranked so low here. Michael Williams, or Michael Williams, I don't know how you say it specifically, but he had 4.5 sacks this past season, 1 fumble force, 16 tackles, and 9 solo tackles. He's 6'5", 265. I think that he can be good in the Bears defense. It makes me consider these guys, but they might just try to go run. I mean, JT has always been talked about. Nick Scorton, I just can't see him fitting into the Bears with strictly being an edge rusher. He has pretty even stats, though. Jack Sawyer, also an edge rusher. 8 sacks. I don't know. I just like the grit from Georgia and most of their players that end up being damn good, and especially the linemen. Yeah, I think I'm going to have them take Michael Williams or Michael Williams out of Georgia. 2 pass deflections, too. 6'5", 265. Yeah, I'm going to have Michael Williams going to the Chicago Bears. I'm glad they changed their logo on that, because I don't know why it was the alternate logo for so long. But the Chargers are now on the board, and they're probably hoping that Mason Graham was going to fall to this position, but unfortunately not. But they do get a good consolation prize here. And that's Deion Walker. That man is a behemoth. 55 tackles, 7.5 sacks, 2 pass deflections. No fumbles forced or anything like that, but 6'6", 348. Defensive tackle has always been like carousel for the Los Angeles Chargers. And this man right here I can see having a good future for the Chargers. And it's going to be funny if that ends up not happening or not panning out. That's just the beauty of this way too early mock draft. The Houston Texans now on the board at the 20th spot have been more on the offensive focus this past year. They didn't have a first round pick in this past draft class. I think we will end up seeing another Michigan defensive lineman coming off the board. Kenneth Grant also has similar size to Mason Graham. Maybe not as talented, but I think could definitely fill in that defensive line because they have their edge rushers. Like I said in the past mock draft, their defensive interior is a little bit of a concern. But 6'3", 339 is very good. Walter Nolan was also somebody that I was looking at for them. But I think I'm going to go Kenneth Grant with them. Simply because of talent. His size is good. It's not like Deion Walker size, but I think he would fill in just fine with the Houston Texans defense. And with the Jets, it says QB need because Aaron Rodgers' contract is going to be up, which if he plays another year, I'm not sure. He might. I think he fulfills the whole 2-year thing, but then after next year, he's definitely going to be gone. I just don't see it. I don't see it in this one yet. I think they take the risk and wait for another year. But they still do need a tight end because they never got that, or a legitimate one. Colston Loveland, who I've seen a good bit at Michigan, has 649 yards, 4 TDs, and 14.5 yards per reception. He's 6'5", 245. I think he can do it all. Simply with the size as well. And I think with the Jets, he'd perform just fine. Yeah, I'm going to go with him to go to the Jets. That's 2 Michigan players back-to-back, actually. The Atlanta Falcons are now on the board, and hopefully they don't fuck up this pick. Wide receiver's a possibility. You really have Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and that's it. You have Bijan, of course, but a legitimate wide receiver. This is probably where my Emeka Egbuka bias comes in. I think he's going to perform well this year. And hopefully he does and he proves me right. I will be pissed if he doesn't prove me right. And I will have him not even go in the first round for the remainder of my mock drafts if I go through the entire college season and I see him do absolutely nothing. But Emeka Egbuka, I think, is going to get off the board here to the Falcons. Yeah, I'm going to go with Emeka Egbuka going to the Falcons and joining that receiving core that they have to try to make them even better or even more powerful than they already are. Hopefully that pick of the Michael Penix thing just is a good pick. I understand that Kirk Cousins is coming off injury that he probably won't be the same coming back from. But he's also done it before. So I don't know. We'll have to see. The Dolphins are now on the board. And they took edge this year. Halfback, I can't really see. It. But Ollie Gordon does look good. And I could possibly see that in the future mock drafts. I don't see them going edge again. Takario Davis is an option. He is definitely an option. Had 1 interception, 4 TDs. Interesting. Or allowed 4 TDs. My fault. I'm slow right now. 6'4", 185. Maybe needs to add some weight. I can't see them going wide receiver. I think they have plenty. But Evan Stewart, 6 foot, 175. I don't know. I just can't see it. And I'm a Dolphins fan. I don't know. That just seems a little too much. I understand the whole identity that they have, but they really need to try to get some more cornerbacks. We'll do Zakario Davis. I mean, Jabbar Muhammad, yeah, no. I think they're going to want more size than anything. We're going to put Zakario Davis on the Miami Dolphins. I think he's talented in his own right, coming out of Arizona. And with the Green Bay Packers in this past draft going with offensive tackle, I see them going to the opposite side of the ball because that's originally what I thought they were going to do, but I know that they took Lucas Van Ness in the previous draft, so I can see why they didn't do it. But JT Tuimoloau seems to be talented and consistent. 6'4", 270, 21 years old. He's probably going to be 22 by the time the draft comes. I think that he's a plug-and-play type of player. He's performed very well at Ohio State. He's not like a perennial superstar, but he can be very good for the Green Bay Packers in that defensive line. With the Cowboys coming up on the board, this is a spot that they don't have running back anymore. Yeah, they just signed Ezekiel Elliott. They have a solid running back room behind that, and they had it before Ezekiel Elliott came in. But Ollie Gordon II had 1,700 yards, 50 targets, 21 TDs, and 6.1 yards per attempt, which is insane. And I think that if he continues that pace, the Cowboys are going to want him. He is definitely a workhorse running back, and I think that that's really what they're going to be trying to look for. That's probably why they signed Ezekiel Elliott, to try to make him the workhorse. They try to do that with Pollard, and that just didn't work out. He's also only 20 years old, so has some years on him still. The biggest concern with running backs is the wear and tear on their legs, so I think that he's going to be very good coming out of OSU. And breaking tackles, because he definitely does that. Philadelphia Eagles, though, the 26th spot in the draft, could be taking edge because of the Hassan Reddick situation. Nick Scorton is really the easy option here with 8 sacks, 6 hits, 28 hurries, 3 passes batted down. He's basically an edge rusher with how many times he's lined up outside of the tackle. 6'4", 260. Yeah, 50 tackles too. I don't know if I said that. But out of Purdue, I'm going to have Nick Scorton going to the Eagles. I think they need to still get younger. I think they need to keep that trajectory that they've been going with getting younger and younger and younger and extending their young guys as well. And I think Nick Scorton could come in and help out. I mean, that's like a hit or miss type of pick, but that's what you're getting at the end of this first round here. And the Detroit Lions are now on the clock and could try to take some depth at this position. I might go Patrick Payton because of simply his size advantage that he has. I think he can continue to get better also because Jared Verse is not going to be there and they're going to have to rely on somebody to come off the edge. 7 sacks, 32 hurries. Played pass rush and run defense. They didn't take him out at any point or take him out a significant amount of times. Yeah, I think Patrick Payton is the guy that they'll probably try to go with because I just never see the Detroit Lions being the type of team of being like, the guy at the top of the list, I'm taking them. Because they did it with Jake Campbell. Why did they take Jake Campbell in that draft? I don't know. They had confidence in him in some way. He performed well at points, but this might be another scenario of that happening. But I'm going to have Patrick Payton going to the Detroit Lions. And with the Bengals now on the board, who also seem to be struggling with that running back position, because now Zach Moss is their running back one. We might see 2 running backs hop off the board. Quinshon Judkins had 1,600 yards in his first season. Or was that his first? Yeah. His freshman season. Then 1,200 yards. But he still had a consistent amount of TDs. He had almost the same amount of attempts. So for some reason, he dropped off a little bit. If he's able to bring that back up, I would definitely have him going to the Bengals, as most people do. And also just simply because they need running back. And I don't see them paying him or paying a running back. Joe Mixon already left. Yeah, I'm going to have the Ole Miss running back going to the Cincinnati Bengals. They need to get younger, and they need to keep their wide receivers that they have. If they're not able to keep T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, that's going to be concerning. At least try to keep one of them, preferably Jamar Chase. But it seems like the trajectory is not looking good. But halfback is going to be the position I go with them right now. It might change come closer to the season, just simply because if they don't sign Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or either or, they might look wide receiver, and they might try to go up in the draft, to be honest with you, to get that Luther Burden III or any wide receiver at that, or just take the year, because these aren't like I said, the Malik Neighbors or the Marvin Harrison Juniors. They're just good wide receivers. But the Buffalo Bills are now on the board, who took their wide receiver in Keon Coleman. And it seemed like I predicted that correctly for a while, that I felt like no matter what, they were going to take Keon Coleman, whether it was in the first round, which it wasn't, or in the second round, which they did the smart thing. They got some picks. I don't know how much they got out of it specifically. I think it was like 2 picks out of that trade down process that they had. Now this upcoming year, they have 2 second-round picks because of the Stephon Diggs trade. But I think the first thing that they handle is replacing Von Miller's position, because God knows that they do not want that man in that locker room anymore. At least I know that I wouldn't, because why the fuck am I paying him so much money for no reason? He does absolutely nothing but just be there at this point. He is not the Von Miller that we once knew. And they really need to find another man. And Jake Sawyer, I think, is going to do amazing in that Buffalo defense on the opposite side of Greg Rousseau. 6'4", 265, had 8 sacks and 9 hits, 48 tackles, and 2 forced fumbles. Yeah, I'm going to have Jack Sawyer going to the Buffalo Bills. Ideally, that would be the scenario. Maybe he could have gone to the Lions. I just don't know with the Lions how they go. Like, I'm really trying to predict this in a way that it's the team and what they would do. And I just picked the Lions how I felt like it would be necessary. Now, I'm sure the Lions fans are not going to be the most happy about it, but y'all can deal with it up until I make another mock draft. The Baltimore Ravens, though, a team that their offensive line is getting older and also leaving. And guard does seem like a very viable option. 6'5", 335, Tyler Booker. And they've been known to not reach, but just take a pick that people wouldn't really expect them to take. I could see Tyler Booker being the guy. I don't see them taking safety. Didn't they just take Nate Wiggins? Yeah. So they're not going cornerback in the first round for sure. And that just takes out a lot of options. I don't see wide receiver or tight end unless some drastic injury happens. But yeah, I think I'm going to go Tyler Booker to the Baltimore Ravens. They like to focus on their offensive line even if it's a reach. And I think for them this wouldn't be a reach. Do they even have a second round pick? I know sometimes these teams don't really keep them. Oh, they do. They do. But again, it's late. So Tyler Booker probably wouldn't fall all the way to that spot. being from Alabama, of course, who plays left guard, has played right guard, so he can play whatever position that they need him to play and be dominant in that fact. And now the San Francisco 49ers are now on the clock, who, I mean, basically everybody thought that they were going to take offensive tackle in this draft, and they ended up taking Ricky Pearsall, which has seemed to pan out with what the reports have been saying. But now is really one they do need to try to get a younger tackle. What's his name? Trent Williams is only getting older, and you need to try to find somebody that's going to fill in that tackle position. And 6'5", also 6'5", 308, 335. Jesus Christ. I've been leaning towards a Johnny for them. He's allowed no sacks in the past season. For some reason, his rating was better in the season that he did from PFF. I like a Johnny a little more than Jonah. He allowed 2 sacks and 3 hits, and the 49ers wouldn't even worry about a grade. They'd worry about how many times that they let that edge rusher get by or anybody get by. And Johnny seems to be, Johnny Cornelius, that's a hell of a name, has seemed to be, good God, has seemed to be very good on that side of the ball, not side of the ball, on that edge that he controls. And I think that's what they're going to go with. Johnny Cornelius could learn a lot from Trent Williams. And the Kansas City Chiefs, the godforsaken team, is now on the clock. And with a defensive line pick that they had a couple years ago not really panning out right now with Felix, because I haven't really seen anything from him, and I had high hopes for him. But we could see them go with edge, or we could see them go with another side of the defensive line. Nazir Stackhouse, 6'3", 320, is a senior. Got 2 sacks. Howard Cross seems to really be better talent-wise, but his size is a little concerning. Being 6 foot at defensive interior. Tyleek Williams, 2 sacks, 3 hits. I mean, it really seems like Nazir Stackhouse looks the best here. I mean, Walter Nolan just has the size, and 7 sacks. Actually, I'm going to go Walter Nolan at this spot. Out of Texas A&M, has the size, young, has had 7 sacks. Nazir Stackhouse, like, I can understand it, but for right now, I prefer a Walter Nolan over that for sure. We're going to go ahead and do that for the Kansas City Chiefs. And that is going to do it for my 2025 Way Too Early mock draft. If you have any opinions about it, let me know. I'm more than happy to talk about it and see your guys' opinions and talk about who we really think is going to be going to a certain team. Like if Travis Hunter is really going to go in the top 3. I like it though. I like this draft. I think everybody really got what they needed in a way. I know some Dolphins analysts think that they're going to take wide receiver. I don't quite understand why. But yeah, let me know what you think down in the comments below while you're down there. Like so more people can see it. It helps the algorithm while I'm getting back into the swing of things. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Peace.